And welcome back to the AWA 1990 project. I'm your host, Alex G, and with me, as always, is Matt Riley. What's going on tonight, Matt?
I'm pumped. I'm excited. I'm in a good mood.
It's going to be a dope show. But before we get into that, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping before we move on. Now, guys, I'm very happy with the support we've been getting over the last 4 years for this YouTube channel. We're about at 2,500 subscribers, which is great. I'm really happy with our view counts, and even our watch times as of late has gone up. So thank you guys all in advance for that. I appreciate that. And guys, if you want to support the channel, there's a couple of things that you can do. First and foremost, please subscribe. After that, hit that like button on the video. After that, please leave a comment. Be negative, positive, I don't care. Just leave a comment. I respond to all of them, by the way. And guys, we have a brand new way that you guys can support the channel. Times are tough right now, and I understand that. I think we all understand that. I'm currently furloughed from my job. I'm waiting to get the call back to go back to work. So I understand that money's tight. So guys, at this point, a lot of people will be talking about Patreons and paywalls, and we're not going to do any of that as of right now. So I have no plans to set up a Patreon. I have no plans to put any of our content behind a paywall. But if you guys want to support the channel, we have become an Amazon affiliate. So there'll be an Amazon affiliate link in the description of this video. And guys, you're not going to do anything more than what you normally do. So if you shop on Amazon, it's not going to cost you anything. Just click our link and make your normal everyday purchases on Amazon, and we'll get a percentage of your purchase. And that's a great way to support our channel without spending any extra money. Again, I don't want to take any extra money away from anybody at this point. I understand that times are tough, but if you guys are interested in supporting the channel, please click on the link below. You'll see it in the description, and that's our Amazon affiliate link. So, and I know the holidays are coming up, and you want to get some gifts for your loved ones. This is a great way to not only get your friends and family's gifts, but you can also support this channel as well. So thank you for that, guys. I appreciate it. And if you guys will do us that favor, it'll be greatly appreciated. So Matt, going through the AWA 1990 project, we're also talking about who are we going to bring in? Who are going to be the next stars? Who are some of the wrestlers that we're interested in? In our last episode, we talked about, what if, Hulk Hogan became available. But the reality of the situation is that Hulk Hogan in 1990 did not become available. So that was more of a what if scenario. But a more realistic scenario for us would be a guy that, was a big star, a guy that, for me personally, he represents everything we want in terms of our work rate and our style in the ring. And then we have pretty much a ready-made angle for this guy to come in. And for us, I think the most important thing is that we don't really have to do anything with this guy. This guy can be inserted in main events almost immediately. So, guys, as you know, we have this feud between Eric Embry, Gary Young, Steve Austin, and they're feuding with gentlemen Chris Adams and Norman Smiley. Now, who makes the most logical sense to come in to even the odds for Chris Adams and Norman Smiley? Well, this guy is available, and we're going to bring him in, and that is the British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith. Davey Boy, for the last couple of years prior to 1990, he's been bouncing around a little bit. Had a basically had a cup of coffee in the AWA, but that doesn't really count. He's spending most of his time in Japan and in Stampede. And Stampede did the big British Bulldogs breakup. And he does make his way back to the WWF after SummerSlam 1990. But before he gets to the WWF, we get to him first. And we're going to bring in Davey Boy Smith. Now, for me, Davey Boy Smith is a fantastic guy to get, especially in this position. Now, he can work our style that we want to work, which is going to be a heavy work rate, Japan-like style. Also with that British influence. And the AWA crowd has been already kind of programmed to enjoy that British influence. You already had Billy Robinson in the AWA already. So, again, these guys will really be into that kind of style. Again, trying to corner the market on Hearts here. Trying to corner the market on Hart family members. We already have Owen. Owen's already in for us. We do have the Pegasus Kid in for us. And bringing in Davey as another guy. The kind of, we could do a lot of different things with Davey Boy. He's so versatile, especially when, like, a guy of his size. Like he's a big dude, especially in 1990. Like he is huge.
Yeah.
But he could also he can do all the stuff too. He can do all all the hot moves, so to speak. I think he's a fantastic pickup. And again, as we try to collect more hearts, we're gonna make the pitch to the Anvil, and we're gonna make the pitch to Brett to bring those guys in too. We're gonna make the pitch to Pillman. Hopefully, we can get him in also, and it gives us a nice core of guys. Especially, us being in the upper Midwest. We want to get Canadians into our product as well, and then we could obviously tour Canada with them and tour internationally with them if we had to. I think Davey Boy is a fantastic pickup, and I do enjoy braids. Davey Boy Smith with the braids. I think that's fantastic.
Oh, Islander version of Bulldog.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bulldog from the Caribbean.
And I think when it comes with Davey, can we say this? Can we say this? Was the British Bulldogs the most popular tag team in WWF in the 80s? Like in the 80s itself?
I think that's an argument you can make because who was more popular than them? Strikeforce fell apart. Can-Am fell apart.
Hearts were heels a lot of that time.
Yeah, Demolition was heels most of that time.
The Rockers, I wouldn't put them above the Bulldogs.
No, they Rockers, like Michaels became huge when he left. I mean, that wasn't like no one was like, oh my god, the Rockers.
And I'm just saying WWF. I'm not even talking about when you talk about Crockett and other promotions.
Well, who
U.S. Express?
Yeah, I'm like U.S. Express. Before that, who's like Tony Gurria and somebody else, right? Like I think that's a very astute call.
I mean, I would put them over the Killer Bees, right?
Well,
I mean, the Bees were popular.
No. Jim Brunzell was a stud, so
The Bees were popular, but I don't think I would put anyone over the Bulldogs on the baby safes. And I want to talk about the most popular tag team of the '80s. You got to throw in like Rock and Roll Express in there. There's a lot of the different guys you can throw. Road Warriors, obviously, are guys you're going to put in there, of course. But in terms of just WWF proper from the years 1980 to 1989, I would say the British Bulldogs were the most popular tag team in the WWF. I think that's a clear statement. So we're taking someone that obviously a big star throughout the 80s. He's coming into his own as a singles into the 90s, and he was a fantastic worker. Like obviously, the match with Brett in SummerSlam '91 is the one that gets the most attention. Although, it was Brett kind of leading that match, and I think everyone knows the story there. I don't think really dig deep into that one.
Right.
But I don't think people give him the credit. Like he's having amazing matches with the Warlord, for Christ's sakes. You know what I mean? Like, okay. And for like Davey Boy, okay, you put Davey Boy against Pegasus Kid. You put Davey Boy against the Guerreros. Put Davey Boy against Liger, Muda. You can even throw him in there against Scott Norton, Cactus Jack. These are guys that could really fly around. Especially Cactus. Cactus versus Davey Boy would have been amazing. Like imagine the crazy bumps that Cactus would have took for Davey Boy. Like that would have been fantastic. Coquina, even Bundy, Bam Bam Bigelow versus
Coquina Maximus.
Coquina's Maximus, yes, Yokozuna. Even like Bam Bam Bigelow versus Davey Boy. I think it'd be a fantastic matchup. For us, I think Davey Boy is definitely a no-brainer. So Matt, what are your thoughts on Davey Boy?
Well, I was a big fan of his. I think, like you said, he had the size and the speed. He could be a little, choppy here and there, but
not the greatest on a promo.
No, but he I mentioned before on the show, but like I talked about, my group of friends to this day talk about getting Davey Boy, and that was a famous promo with him and Sting, and they were talking about this matchup, and he goes, yeah, and he goes to get high five from Sting, or Sting goes to get a high five from Davey, and Davey just is like screaming at the screen, so like his hand is just left there, like hanging, and he's like, yeah,
you left him hanging.
Man, still this day will be like, oh, you got Davey Boy. So I think with him he is another one of those guys that you think, okay, if a few things had broken differently, his guy just could have been huge. And we saw an article recently. I think it was Dave Meltzer talked about like the next megastar and having it. And I'm really like he had a lot of those qualities, but he wasn't there. But man,
I think a lot of it, he had his demons. We're not going to shy away from that. He had his demons.
Right.
He left the WWF in the early '90s because the steroid situation, of course. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And obviously he had a premature death, but he definitely had his demons for sure. but still, like he is so good. Like he's so ridiculously good that it's insane. Like it's insane, and it's a shame. Like I'm curious about why come Harry Smith hasn't gotten another opportunity with a major promotion in the United States.
Yeah, you'd figure, like, his dad, they'd be like, "Hey, man."
I think WWE would be hot on a Harry Smith. I also think AEW would be hot on a Harry Smith as well because they're very similar and like they're fucking ridiculously good. Like both of them, like they're insane, like
Yeah,
completely insane. It's good size, on the promos, but you get one out of Davey Boy in the right situation, especially if they're pre-taped, like which we're doing. We're doing all pre-taped promos anyway.
right.
So I think there's a lot we can get out of Davey Boy, and definitely someone that could be featured. By 1993, 1994, is someone that's potentially AWA World Championship material, absolutely, without a doubt.
Right.
And and putting him with Chris Adams and Norman Smiley, that's kind of like this British connection type deal, again going against these rednecks and Austin, Embry, and Young. I mean, Embry and Young are going to take fucking bumps all day for them. Eventually, we'll get to the Steve Austin, Davey Boy Smith match, and I think that's going to be money as well. So Davey Boy, I think he's a home run. He's a blue chipper guy. I think he's literally a no brainer. It's like he's available. We got to take him.
Yeah, totally.
You want to get those hearts. Even Bruce, we'll take Bruce Hart too. Fuck it,
Bruce.
Bruce Hart. I would. The one thing that we did not get in the '80s was WWF executive Bruce Hart, which I would have loved.
Wait, as opposed to Jack Tunney.
Well,
Yeah.
the whole thing is that when Stu Hart and the Hart family sold Stampede, I believe there was an office job for Bruce that was supposed to be included in that deal. Now, Bruce being Bruce, he said, "Screw this! I'm not getting this job." So he restarted Stampede, and the WWF stopped paying Stu. So
Yeah.
there's went that $1 million that Vince never gave him. But Bruce Hart is, to me personally, he's like this enigma in the Harts. Like he's like, to me, he's the most interesting Hart family member because he seems like a completely ridiculous person that I always love to hang out with. You ever have those people in your life that they're just completely ridiculous, and
Usually that was me.
you're the ridiculous person in your group.
Well, I was for a long time. I was the ridiculous person. My friends all got married and had kids, and I was the ridiculous person.
Like even some if you go back and watch some of the later Stampede stuff, like the revival Stampede stuff, like some of his booking decisions, like he's funny. Like even some of the names they'd be like they're kind of dirty, like KY Wakamatsu, like that kind of shit. Like he's always doing subliminals in there. So again, Bruce Hart is someone I find interesting, and I would definitely be interested in bringing a Bruce Hart into the AWA for some fun.
Well, he was part of Bad Company, so he can't be.
He was with Pillman.
Yep.
Sort of kind of trained both Lance Storm and Chris Jericho, and those guys would be interested. We'd be interested to bring those guys in, later on in the '90s, of course. Like those guys are no brainers. Like I would do more with Lance too. Like Lance had top guy potential, and I don't think he got his due, especially in that WCW run when they put all the belts on him.
Yeah.
Except for the world title, and then he gets squashed by Kevin Nash. Yeah, that was a missed opportunity because, during WCW 2000, Lance Storm was probably, for me, like the most interesting person there. And he was so ridiculously good. So, when you want to keep those, those heart connections open because they're a pathway to many, many, many great wrestling stars. So we want to keep the Hart family involved in our business as well. So I love that. I love the Hart family. And, obviously the guy to get would be Brett, right? You want to get Brett. The one things that people don't talk about as well, we talk about executives, is we never got WWF executive Bret Hart because part of his 20-year contract for the WWF is like he was going to do like a couple more years in ring and then become an executive.
Yep.
So I would like to see what his booking credentials are, him aging a match, because a lot of his matches he put them together and they're fantastic. It would be him and Austin or him and Davey Boy or him and Owen. Like he put a lot of those matches together. So I would love to see WWF agent Bret Hart, what that would look like, or WWF writer / booker Bret Hart and see what that would be. Because he had more of a traditionalist type of thought process in his wrestling as well. and I would like to see what that what that would have looked like. That would have been really interesting. But like I said, Davey Boy, home run for sure. He's someone that's going to be a focal point in a lot of things we do moving forward, especially when it comes to the top heel of the company, which is not here yet, by the way. There'll be a whole show about this gentleman once that comes into place. But our top heel moving forward is not even in the company right now. But he's someone that'll be coming real soon, so be on the lookout for that on a future episode. And no, it's not heel David Sammartino. So,
Oh.
I like there's certain guys I like. Like there's certain guys that I find interesting. Like no one likes Al Madrill but me. I think Al Madrill is hilarious.
Well, he looks at flower shop, so.
Well, he did Fiesta Gardens and
Fiesta Garden, that's what it was.
And then like his gimmicks that he hates children. And like I like Al Madrill.
The gimmick you can all get behind.
Yeah, for sure. And, like there's certain guys that like Bad News Allen is another guy that if at any time if I'm in charge of a wrestling promotion during any time that he was active, I'm bringing in Bad News Allen. Like he's just one of those guys that I like to have. They talk about bookers, and bookers would have their crew. And when bookers go from territory to territory, they would bring their guys with them. And my guys would be like Al Madrill, and Bad News Allen, Larry Cameron, JT Southern. It would be like a complete ridiculousness. It would be awesome. It'd be the best. But guys, if you have any notable guys you'd like to see get brought into the AWA, again, make it reasonable. Make it someone that's available. Obviously we're gonna be looking at, your Sean Waltmans will be coming up soon, and you want to get a place for them. Your Jerry Lynn's will be coming up soon. Sabu will be coming up soon. We already got Taz, so Taz is already here. He's in this Tazmaniac gimmick, but Taz is here, and he's having matches with Vic Steamboat, which is awesome.
Vic Steamboat.
I know you're a big fan of Tony Rumble, right?
Oh, yes.
Matt, I wanted to show you. There's this clip of Triple H, like, in some sort of random Massachusetts indie. Are you familiar with that at all, or?
Vaguely, a friend of mine managed him for a while over there when he was terrorizing. Not the guy in the video.
Okay.
So when I first saw the video, I was like, I thought you managed. Like, oh yeah, it was in between. But yeah, the accent is pretty powerful, and it makes you think like how many people have come really far when it comes to like how they started, and the whole like how it started, how we got here, what's going on now.
You think he took like voice lessons like Missy Hyatt did to lose his accent?
I hope so.
Because it was thick as fuck.
Yeah, I mean, I always go back to my acting days and auditioning, and the woman in front of me auditioned, and it was Shakespeare, and she was like, Romeo, where for act thou, Romeo? And like you could just visibly feel the cringe go through the people waiting to audition. Like, oh. But I have fake accents too, so whatever it takes.
Well, you think the process was when he started doing that French accent, which is terrible in WCW.
Yeah, but if you're a bad guy, a French bad accent, yeah, it's fine.
No, it's a good gimmick. No one likes the French. Unless you listen to the show and you happen to be French, then we love you. But no one really likes the French. They're snooty.
They're snooty. Oh.
Speaking of French guys, there's a bunch of them, or French Canadians actually, on the show that we're going to talk about next. Now, we usually talk about AWA shows, but I felt this show was super important. It is a WWF show, and it's important for a lot of different reasons. Number one, because it set all-time pay-per-view records set all-time pay-per-view records for wrestling, for anything associated with pay-per-view, from what I understand. And it was, probably one of the top 10 pay-per-views for a long time. It was like the number one WWF pay-per-view until well into the Attitude Era, in terms of buy rates. And it's a super important show. Now, people who may have watched it at the time, or if you read some of the dirt sheets and stuff, they don't really speak highly on this show. But I've watched the show about 1,000 times, to the point where like I know all the commentary in my head. I don't even have to watch it. I can have it on, and I know what's going on. And that show is WrestleMania 5. WrestleMania 5 is April 2nd, 1989, taking place from Atlantic City, New Jersey. The venue was the Boardwalk Hall. at the time, the Trump Plaza. The thing about Boardwalk Hall, I don't think people kind of get this, is that whoever is like kind of promoting, what casino is promoting the show, the arena will take the name of that show. So it would be like Caesar's Palace, or it would be Trump Plaza, or whatever, whatever casino is doing that show. The venue would change its name for that, which is weird, but whatever. So it was the Trump Plaza, which is easily recognizable because of the gaudy yellow carpet in that arena, which is gross. Another thing interesting about the arena overall is they had stairs. So a lot of they had two entrances. You had a floor entrance that went to the back, and then you had these stairs that went down, which is really, really bizarre. And during the Mr. Perfect Blue Blazer match, Mr. Perfect actually trips on the stairs and almost falls.
Oh.
So, guys, I guess everyone knows the main event of this show was Hulk Hogan taking on Randy Savage for the WWF Heavyweight Championship, and the Mega Powers did, in fact, explode all over your face, technically.
Oh.
But after watching quite a bit of the television leading up to this show is unique in a way that a lot of the matches are tied to angles and feuds. Now, up to this point, especially if you look at WrestleMania 4, which was the tournament, again, not a lot of angles and feuds. And even WrestleMania 3, WrestleMania 2 had a fucking squash match on it, and so did WrestleMania 1. WrestleMania 1 feels more like a WWF MSG house show. So for this one, they actually spent quite a bit of time building a lot of these angles up. And one of the ways they built up the show, which seems weird on the surface, but it kind of makes sense, especially if you watch recent events, they had debates going into this show. So all your key angles and feuds on the go-home show before WrestleMania, the two participants or four participants, whatever that may be, they would have a debate, a face-to-face verbal confrontation, which is real interesting, especially when we just see the Chris Jericho MJF debate that wasn't too long ago. So, Matt, what are your thoughts on debates in wrestling?
Most debates are terrible, often because they're thinking, well, it's like contract signings. You know it's going to end in mayhem. It's how you get there. And for the most part, wrestling contract signings to me are the most dumbest things in wrestling. Is it tries to give us like, this is a really important match. They're already under contract. Just shut up.
It'd be more interesting if they did it like at a venue or something, like at a board, in a boardroom instead of in the ring.
Like a Barnes and Noble, like
not in a Barnes and Noble, but like look at Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant's contract signing. Like they had the tables, right. And they're going back and forth, and that was interesting.
Yeah.
But some of the stuff they've done within the last 20 years of it happening in the ring, it tends to be kind of lame.
I agree. It's always a terrible, terrible idea.
Yeah. So the first match on this card, we have Hercules taking on King Haku with Bobby Heenan. Now, guys, don't forget that Bobby Heenan had recently sold Hercules to the $1 Million Man as a slave. That was a real angle.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah. It's interesting. The kingship was not online here, which is weird. I know King Haku recently became the king and actually had the match at Royal Rumble '89, where he defeated a returning Harley Race to kind of cement himself as the king of wrestling. They have this match with Hercules. They do that kind of weird, like belly to back suplex. They're both pinned 1-2. Hercules gets the arm up in the last second and wins the match. It's kind of a cheesy finish. Not necessarily a big fan of it. I'm a big fan of both Haku and Hercules. Hercules is just massive at this point. Like, he is so ridiculous.
He got so big, it was ridiculous.
And you go later on in the 90s where he gets the big steroid belly, too. It's like, he's looking like the Iron Sheik, bro.
Is that what that was?
That's what it is. When they get the big gut, but they're like all still muscular on top. Yeah, that's steroid belly, apparently. And I'm a big fan of Haku. I mean, Haku will go on to lose the king of the WWF moniker to Hacksaw Jim Duggan, who would then lose it to Randy Savage. But this is kind of weird. It was kind of a title for a little bit, sort of. You know what I mean? Like, it's an unofficial official championship. Like, what are your thoughts on kind of these weird kind of titles, Money in the Bank, and some of these other stuff that we have? Like, they're technically titles in a certain aspect of this. And some of these weird, they're not actually like championship belts, but they're kind of defended in a certain kind of way. What are your thoughts on these in general?
I think it depends who holds them. I mean, like the Money in the Bank is kind of become its own thing now because of the prestige about it and the novelty of the a title match. It could pop up out of nowhere. Fans going berserk when someone runs down the ring, like, oh my god, I'm gonna see history. But the things like King or the $1 million belt, it's how you use it. I mean, like if the whole like the 24/7 belt when they first came up, it was like okay, it got old within like a week and a half when you realize it's just gonna be nonsense. But like okay, like over in the BTE, I'm sorry, the AEW, they right now have this thing called the BTE Championship, and they're doing during their BTE shows, they're doing like random contests. The idea of the belt is it's defended other than wrestling matches. It can be wrestling matches too, but it's some other way. So they have these guys playing gator golf, which is like mini golf with like a little
Right.
thing, right? And it's a hoot to watch. It's awesome. It's so much fun. You don't know who's going to win. It's a shoot. Um, so it adds a different element to it. But I think it would depend like how they parlay that into the AEW broadcast. Like if they walk out with that belt and they don't mention it, you're like, oh, he's the champion. But if they have him come out and he's like, I'm the champion, and let's say Abaddon, if she's not dead, comes over and is like, I want to challenge you for that in a ping pong match, and you're like, what? And like you got to accept, and like, okay, now we're gonna get kind of random craziness. I think with the King or titles that have like a Mr. Wrestling or whatever the award title might be, right? It depends who owns it, how they promote it. Like if you're King of the Ring, and I remember King Sheamus, like okay, Steve Austin was King of the Ring.
They got away from actually doing stuff with that because historically the King of the Ring would get a shot at the title at SummerSlam. They
Right.
did that a couple of times. Like it made sense when Brett won it, and then he had Jerry Lawler attack him. It was pretty good when Owen won it, and even King Mabel to a certain degree. He got a push out of that at least. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
he challenged Diesel at SummerSlam for the title, so like it was a way to get these guys over without adding more championship belts. And I guess the WWE in the '90s at the very least were very strict on how many belts they actually had. They never really had like a TV belt. They would start adding belts as we go through the '90s, but there's only you had those three belts for a very long time. It would be World, Intercontinental, and Tag, and that's all you had. So I guess they had to create different things to kind of like like you said, like the King and the $1 Million Man to kind of generate some sort of interest there. Like yeah. Virgil did win the $1 Million belt, and obviously the kingship went through a couple of guys
Mm-hmm.
before Savage retired. So that was pretty cool. But overall, it can be lame. I think the WWF did the best what they could during the time frame. I think it was good for Haku. He got a push out of it. So I thought that was a lot of fun. And
Right.
having Haku as a king is pretty ridiculous in general.
Right. I think it's a thing too where you can take someone like right now Baron Corbin had the King,
Right.
and he completely changed his character to become the King. I get that, but the thing is that well, if there's no way for him to be dethroned, I've always felt a better way to do it. All right, my own personal opinion is the next year the King of the Ring, the person who wins it, then goes on to face last year's King in a match at SummerSlam.
That makes a lot of sense.
And that way you have someone saying, okay, you think you're a better king than and they win it, that they advocate, how do you say, advocate the throne,
Advocate.
that too, and you have a matchup over that, and that would be a really great way to like continue, like continuity wise, you've got the ex or the current king taking on the potential suitor, whatever, or replacement, and it builds better storyline, and then maybe they have that be a big deal, but again, a lot of the problems with the wrestling writing nowadays is the continuity. It's
Lack
all
of continuity.
right, the lack of continuity. And I really feel that what happens in wrestling all too often is we as fans appreciate the work they put into it, the writing and the angles, and then we see the people who do it like just drop the potato, and so it's like, well, why should I care? I'll give you a quick example. I've been watching Supernatural, the TV
Okay.
show.
Yeah.
I had a friend. I got laid off of work years ago. I was out of work for almost a year. It was really hard. But my friend at the time was like, "Hey, just watch this show." And he had like 8 seasons of it, or whatever it was. Right. So I blew through this series, watched it. Now I've watched it for years, and one of the nicer things about that show is attention to detail. Even some of the you thought was a throwaway show, they bring back an important part of that. And it's really a nice thing to see, like where, I remember like in Demolition Man, I know this is jumping around a bit. In Demolition Man, when Wesley Snipes runs into Stallone again, and he makes the comment, and he's like, "Good memory." It's like you're showing that they're paying attention to what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think as wrestling fans, we just want to see that as well. So I think for you mentioned earlier, this show is really laid out with a lot of matches that have more to do than just two guys showing up. And I think that makes a big difference. You don't have to. Well, I was going to mention actually when I was looking at the stuff pre-show work. All right, I noticed the times of the matches. There's not 15 and 20-minute grueling matches.
No.
They're like 8 minutes, 9 minutes, 10 minutes. Most of them are
Main
under
event
10
goes the
minutes.
longest. That's it.
What's that?
Main event goes the longest.
Right, but I think it shows you don't need to have a 15, 20-minute match to tell the story. I'm not saying every match has to have like a crazy finish or a dusty finish, but just saying that you can do a lot with less if you do it right.
Absolutely. Speaking of a match that had no build, the Twin Towers, Hakeem and the Big Boss Man, who defeated the Rockers. I understand why there wasn't that much build in this match because the Twin Towers had been recently feuding with the Mega Powers. So, like, they couldn't really switch gears to go to the Rockers in enough time because, again, the big match, Twin Towers and the Mega Powers, took place in, like, February. So it's like 6 weeks ago. So there wasn't really enough time to get the Towers and the Rockers off the ground. So basically, it's basically the Twin Towers just beating the shit out of the Rockers in this match.
Right.
The Rockers tried to do this double drop kick thing that if it would have hit, it would have killed the Boss Man.
Really?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So like I think Sean hits it, but then Marty misses it, and they're coming off two opposite ropes with a double drop kick off the top. Like, oh, that would have been bad. But the Twin Towers here getting the big win over the Rockers, basically not necessarily a squash, but in a decent contest. The Rockers, they're still pretty new. They've been in for about a year or so, maybe a little bit less. They came in sometime in '88, right? I think right after WrestleMania 4. But the Rockers are in here, and they're still getting a little bit of buzz here, and the Towers here with a big win. You would think you would get the big Demolition Twin Towers match, but we never really got that on pay-per-view or in the Saturday main event, which we probably should have gotten because obviously the Towers were a big deal. They were feuding with Hogan and Savage, for Christ's sake, so they're really, really up high in the card at this point. So, but again, it's an overall fun match. So, what are your thoughts on the Twin Towers, Akeem, the African Dream, and the Big Boss Man, with Slick, by the way?
That was a pairing where it was like I remember when they first debuted. I remember walking into high school, and one of my friends was like doing the Akeem, and he was like, "Guess who my tag partner is going to be?" And I was like, "I know." And he's like, "What? Why?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, they're keeping him Boss Man." And I think I always think to myself, I was like, "How would a gimmick if they put it out now? Like if they put it out now?"
Was he thinking that they're going to put Boss Man in a dashiki and stuff?
Well, that's the thing. Like I was thinking, like if they put them out as a team now, it would be horribly tone deaf, but it would just be a matter of.
Does Slick make it okay? Because Slick is okay with it.
Sure.
The funny thing about this is that there's an episode of Arsenio Hall where the Twin Towers are on there with Slick, and Slick tells Arsenio that Akeem's gonna be the first black heavyweight champion.
Yeah.
Is it tone deaf? Yeah, but is it like so ridiculous though? Like the heat is so ridiculous because you have Slick saying this is gonna be the next black heavyweight champion in the world. It's from deepest, darkest Africa, and it's like everyone knows he's full of obviously he's full of shit. You know what I mean? Like fuck this guy. It made more sense for Boss Man and One Man Gang to be a team though, because I can see like the gang leader and the crooked cop, they kind of going together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like to me, that made like a little bit more sense. But Akeem was on the doghouse because he wanted some time off, and Vince was like, "You have this run with Hogan. What are you doing?" Like, no. He's like, "Well, I'm taking this time off." So he left for a little while, and they came back, and the Akeem gimmick was not only to punish him, but to make fun of Dusty Rhodes, because obviously those people who worked at WWF at the time, Vince included, I guess, thought that Dusty Rhodes was a white man trying to be a black guy. And in a lot of ways, that's probably accurate. Up next, we had Brutus the Barber Beefcake and Ted DiBiase. Now they had a little bit of angle going on, but again, that's not something that was necessarily a big focus on. So I guess the whole idea here was that Brutus wants to cut Ted DiBiase's hair, and Ted DiBiase, pays a lot of money, $75,000 a year for his haircuts. I think is the number that I heard from Ted DiBiase about how much he
Right.
spends on his grooming. This match just leads out to a double count out, which is kind of a lame finish. I understand you're trying to protect DiBiase here, and the beefcake you do have eyes on for something in the future. But why go over a double count out here instead of doing something different? Like, what do you think?
Well, I've often thought no one does this finish. This has not been done yet. So if one of our ideas gets stolen again, so be it.
It does a lot, guys, a lot.
A lot. It's whatever. Uh, maybe we have a bigger audience than we think. Or it's the right audience. And just hire us. Hire us, guys. We'll help. Here's the finish to that hair versus hair match. Yeah, Beefcake beats him. And Beefcake goes to cut his hair and stops and goes, "No, I have the rights to your hair for a year. You're not going to shave or cut your hair." And then you proceed to have him grow his hair out and look mangier and mangier and mangier. Till he's felt like he's begging him, "Please cut my hair, please." And then we get the hair versus like whatever type rematch where he wins the right to cut his hair. And this time maybe he shaves his head or whatever. I don't know. But like,
I mean, it's a marquee matchup for sure. Like, it's Beefcake and
yeah.
Ted DiBiase. It's a marquee matchup, and I think it's the only non-finish we get. We get a disqualification finish later on in the show. We get another DQ, of course, with Bad News Brown and Jim Duggan, but we'll talk about that when we get to it. It's not a lot of these shows during this time frame. They ended with a lot of DQs, walkouts, that kind of shit. That's the first we see on this particular show, but it's a marquee match, and the match is actually really good. Like, a lot of people give Briefcake shit as a worker. I think he was fine. I think he was perfectly acceptable. Now, would I put the world title on him? Absolutely not. But before his boating accident, his boating accident, I thought he was good. Like, I never had no beef with beef. I never had any beef with Beefcake.
No,
Like,
I agree. Yeah.
like he's not someone that you would go out of your way to shit on. You know what I mean? Like, he was perfectly. He had that big high knee. He would do the big atomic drop. Sleeper was obviously cool, cutting someone's hair. That was awesome. So, like, I don't understand the Beefcake hate. Now, he's a weird dude now, but nothing said about a lot of wrestlers. All right, up next we had the Bushwhackers, Luke and Butch, and they were taking on the Fabulous Rougeau Bros. Now, this was built up in a little bit of an angle on TV. They had some back and forth, a lot of promos against each other, and they were part of the debate, which is real interesting. This was a fun match. I mean, it was, it's a comedy tag team match. I know you're not a big fan of the Bushwhackers. I think me and you both prefer them as the sheep herders. That's for sure.
I agree. And I think, quickly, I think that what happened with them is they got a comedy act and they got over huge. I mean, they did. I mean, people, like, I have a friend who drank one time a ton and walked like 10 blocks doing the Bushwhacker walk the whole way home. People knew, like, oh, Bushwhackers. Like, they knew exactly what he was doing.
It was probably the right decision for them from years of, like, killing themselves in these hardcore type matches.
Well, that's the thing.
And they're older too.
They could have saved one final hardcore type match or that kind of approach using the twist of, like, you think we're cute, you think, and like have them do like one like final series where like they go against the Rockers and they just destroy them, and it's like, oh my god, like, but they're the Bushwhackers, but that's just me.
It would have been fun. I mean, I was watching an episode of Superstars from like '95. They're still there. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, they're around forever.
Well, I mean, they had mid-card comedy bits. They would, what would you take that money down,
Yeah, perfectly acceptable. I love the Rougeaus. I would have done more with the Rougeaus, especially Jacques is so ridiculous. You would see that later on when we became the Bounty and such, but like, like, they're good. Like, they're really, really good. Like, Raymond is awesome, and putting them with Jimmy Hart, as the All American Boys, which is hilarious. It was such it's so, to me, like, back then it was so easy to get heat. Like, oh no, we're American now. We live in Memphis, Tennessee, but they're kind of making fun of it too.
I'll tell you again. This is someone's going to steal this gimmick. One of the guys I worked briefly at wrestling school a couple years back, and I was helping train guys. And one of the guys, the gimmick we were going to work on was to make this guy the masked Iranian rocker, except he's like a midnight rocker type person, but all of his music's from like the '80s. So he's like, "REO Speedwagon's the best." So like he'd be like behind the times. And I think if you take something and take it in a different direction, the fans, like, it sounds bad, but stereotypes, as much as we, know they're bad in a lot of ways, in wrestling, it's like the bread and butter for years, so you can use that to a certain degree, to your advantage when you go against type. So I just think the Rougeaus as the American heroes was fun.
It's funny
It
because
was,
the
it
Rougeaus
was,
were there for a while. Like they debuted in '86.
here's the
As
thing.
baby
What
faces, like there for a long time.
what happened to Raymond? He went from like, hey, it's Raymond Rougeau to, oh my God, he's old.
He still works there.
I know he does the French commentary, but
Yeah,
just
he's been
like he went
he's
from like,
probably the longest tenured consecutively WWF employee.
wow, really?
Yeah. You figured he was there in '86, and I think other than a brief like absence in 1990, he's been there ever since. And I know him and his brother doesn't necessarily get along all that great because Jacques has to be Jacques and whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Jacques Rougeau trained Kevin Owens. I don't know if people know that.
really?
Uh-huh.
All right.
They don't get along either.
Well,
Because it's Jacques Rougeau, but I love Jacques. I think he's criminally underrated. I think Jacques Rougeau. He invented that package pile driver. I've seen him use it on TV. That's for sure. All American boys, like that. Oh, it's good stuff. Just good stuff. And the funny, like they have this ridiculous gimmick, right? And they're such assholes, but in the ring they can go.
yeah.
They have great matches with the Hearts. Like they're great matches with the Rockers. Like really good in the ring. And our next match we had Mr. Perfect, who debuts his singlet on this show, taking on the Blue Blazer, who we all know is Owen Hart. So Matt, what was your first impressions on the Blue Blazer? Because he was doing shit that no one was doing.
I was a big Blue Blazer fan. I was so psyched. I've always liked master wrestlers, anyways, so I was all about it. And I was like, nice, finally a master wrestler who doesn't suck. And he was goofy. It was like, okay, whatever.
I think the look. I mean, he could have been masked. That would have. I think the look kind of hurt him with the big cape.
Yeah.
That was kind of weird. I kind of wish he was just Owen Hart as Brett's brother. You know what I mean? That would have made more sense. They would have wanted him that way. It probably would have given him a bigger push, more longevity. But he's
Yeah.
only in for like a year. And then he bounces around after that before coming back to the WWF. He does a couple shots at WCW, whatever. But he was like the guy that was super hyped in newsletters, like crazy. Like Owen
Oh,
Hart was
I
ridiculous.
I was Pro Wrestling Torch used to be Ring Post, and they would always talk about, like, he was one of the guys that'd be like, this guy's amazing, like Lightning Kid. This guy's
Absolutely.
amazing. You gotta watch this guy work. Benoit, Pegasus Kid, the Kid,
Yeah.
whatever.
Who's definitely one. I guess the first like kind of newsletter darling in the United States, I would say. And then of course you have Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig, who's been in for about like 6 months or so. No, he's coming in, being AWA champion to like kind of this mid card role here, and obviously the Mr. Perfect gimmick works for him because he's that good, legitimately. Did you think that the Mr. Perfect gimmick at the time had the legs and longevity to go on as long as it did, especially with his Intercontinental Championship run?
Oh, I love the hell of it. I will tell you again, this was high school era. We would twice a year we'd have midterms and finals, and you had to kill time. So there was a bowling alley like a block from our school, so we'd walk down and kill time at the bowling. And I created Mr. Average. And yeah, it was, I'm absolutely average and just suck at everything. And the idea, like, the thing on Mr. Perfect, what really to me sold it was the vignettes,
Oh
because
yeah.
they were something we've all done. Like, you hit a hole in one in mini golf, like, yeah, yeah, hit a 3-point shot, but it was just the gratuity of it, every single thing he did, and it was like, that's great. It's stupid, but it's fun.
Now, this match wasn't as good as everyone was kind of expecting. And I think maybe some of the WrestleMania jitters got to them in this match. It
Hmm.
did seem a little bit sloppy. Owen could be a little sloppy, especially early on, because she's trying to hit all these kind of really, really crazy maneuvers at the time.
Yeah.
Um, Not as good as a match as you would think when you hear like, "Hey, Owen Hart taking on Kurt Hennig," but perfectly acceptable. And it's a good way to kind of move them forward. Obviously, Mr. Perfect with the big push, and Blue Blazer would eventually disappear. So,
Right.
so one of the interesting thing about the show was the celebrity guests on this show. Um, Interesting that we didn't have a celebrity sing the national anthem. We had instead Rockin' Robin, which I assume there has to be some sort of story here.
How did that happen?
Yeah, I'm like, who would you pick to sing the national anthem in 1989?
Oh my God. 89?
I'm thinking New Kids on the Block, right?
Uh, I don't think that was their bag, but I could someone like that caliber.
I'm sure they did. I'm sure they. If I go back and look it up, I'm sure they sung at a fucking like World Series game or something around that time frame.
89. So I'm thinking like Whitney Houston. Well, again,
That's too big. That's
she's
too
too big. Yeah,
big.
you're right. You're right. You're right. Tiffany.
Like your
Tiffany.
Madonna's too big. I think Tiffany's already done by this point.
Debbie Gibson.
Debbie Gibson, I think, is already done by '89.
Really?
Yeah.
Fast.
I don't know. Like obviously Madonna's too big. Michael Jackson's too big. Those guys are out. So like my only guess would be New Kids on the Block. That would. And I think Whitney's too big by '89. Maybe Bobby Brown. He can do it.
Wow. Yeah, but
Let's see. Top 100 songs in 1989. Let's see if we can get a
then look in the 30s, right?
someone that's obviously like they could get. They could have got Phil Collins. He did a song with Ultimate Warrior like 2 years later. Roxette could have done it. Millie Vanilli.
Yeah.
This would. How about Paula Abdul?
Oh, you know what? That's a good one. Yeah, I can see Paul Abdul doing it.
That's actually Debbie Gibson did have a hit in '89, so we can go Debbie Gibson. She had Lost in Your Eyes in '89.
I think Debbie Gibson's an easy like that would be someone like
or Gloria Estefan.
Yeah, where was it? Trump Casino.
Yep.
So you want someone like someone who's glitzy-ish and glamorous. Yeah, okay.
New Kids are here, obviously. Let's see. Bon Jovi's too big. Aerosmith's too big. Peter Cetera, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to have to be someone on this level. So it has to be like Kylie Minogue, right? Paula Abdul, like someone on like I don't want to say B tier, but obviously they're not as big a star as Madonna or Michael Jackson, right? Debbie Gibson, probably right in that wheelhouse. Bangles, maybe. They could do it. But I'm wondering if they spent all their music budget on Run DMC. So Run DMC did have a performance at WrestleMania. They performed a WrestleMania rap. Now, for someone who is a big fan of hip hop music, rap music in general, 1989 Run DMC, they're a little past it, to be honest. So like their big years to me is like 84, 85, 86. By 1989, Tougher Than Leather came out. That wasn't great.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're descending. Where like in 1989, obviously the WWF is not going to put NWA on their show. They're not going to put Public Enemy on their show, which would be like really big acts and rap music in 1989. They're not putting Big Daddy Kane up there. Maybe they can get a Fresh Prince. Maybe a Kid and Play would probably be more relevant in 1989 than a Run DMC, to be completely honest. Now, Run DMC, up to that point, had been the biggest mainstream stars in hip hop. So I can see why they were picked. They're local, too, which, kind of helps. And they're wrestling fans. They'll go on to work with WWF later on as well, doing some stuff for them. But yeah, it seemed like an odd, like you couldn't really hear them either. Like it was just a bad performance all around. I don't know. But WWF's trying to stay, current at the time. So I do appreciate that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Run DMC is an interesting choice. Again, probably not the group I would have picked at the time. I probably would have went for more of a Will Smith, because obviously there are going to be some accent and rap music that you're not going to put up there. That's just the reality of the situation. So So like obviously you're not gonna get the NWA, you're not gonna get Public Enemy, you're not getting Big Daddy Kane, not getting KRS-One. Like you're not putting those guys there in those
KRS.
spots. I'm a big fan of Boogie Down Productions. Yeah, so like that Run DMC segment is a big time fast forward. In terms of other celebrities, they had the Piper's Pit, sort of, with Brother Love and Morton Downey Jr.
Oh my God! Yeah,
You remember Morton Downey Jr.?
Yep.
For those of you who don't remember Morton Downey Jr., again, he's a very much a product of the Northeast, right? He's a
Yeah.
product of New York, right? He was on
He was
WOR.
he was Jerry Springer merged with Rush Limbaugh, like an
Yeah.
agitating asshole, crazy shit.
Very trash TV, very Jerry Springer. Would smoke his cigarettes, and he's basically the loudmouth of the time. You know what I mean? Again, this is when like Springer's a couple years away, Stern's already there. I think Donahue's around, Sally Jesse's around. Obviously, what's the other? Jenny Jones will be coming up shortly. Those type of shows. So he had one of the earlier ones. He was a little bit more aggressive, that's for sure.
Yes.
He delved a lot more into politics than a lot of these other shows would go on to do. So yeah, it was like, okay, you put him with Piper and you put him with Brother Love, and obviously Bruce Pritchard has a heck of a Roddy Piper impersonation once you got to whip out, and they got into a little bit of kerfuffle, to say the least. Then you put Piper with Morton Downey, and Morton Downey's blowing the smoke in his face, and eventually Piper hits him with the fire extinguisher, and it looked like Morton goes after Piper's legs, and it looks like Piper's about to nail him with that fucking fire extinguisher for real. And if you watch closely on the video, like Piper starts running away, like he leaves, but he starts running away because Morton Downey's running after him. Literally, Morton Downey wasn't done yet. So
Yeah.
Obviously, I think we all would think that Roddy Piper would beat the living piss out of him, but Morton Downey was game, and that's real 1989. You know what I mean? That's real 1989.
Oh,
very Northeast, very New York, 1989.
People don't realize how. I always say all the time, like, what people do now with TikTok to become stars or whatever. That was basically the 80s and cable in the early 80s. There were so many people that came out of that period, like, had no right being stars, but were because they were the first to, like, do something like no one was doing, or just sheer volume of content.
Like even Stern, like when Stern came out, like to me, like I wanted to be Stern. I was going to college for radio and television. I wanted to be Stern. And then you had the Stern copycats later on. But like that was that era though. It was like like you're going after it. You're saying outlandish stuff on TV, and the 80s was so weird sometimes. Like I know we have this like, and you see in the media now this kind of the way people now remember the 80s. You know what I mean? Whereas like it's fake 80s. It's you see it with shows like The Goldbergs, even Stranger Things. They're like this kind of idyllic version of the 80s, much like in the 80s people looked at shows like Leave It to Beaver and all the other shit of the 50s and 60s.
Right.
Which there was a lot of unrest during those time frames, and the 80s was a rough time for a lot of people. It wasn't like we had a ton of money and we were dirt poor. During that time frame, my dad's working 20 hours a day, it seemed like, and he's never home, and he's doing what he got to do. A lot of people remember it. It was a great time to be nostalgic about, but it was shitty for a lot of people. I don't think a lot of people tend to remember that. Like it was like there's some shows like on Netflix that will show like, especially New York in the 80s was fucked up. Like if you want to know what New York in the 80s was like, go watch The Warriors. Go watch Death Wish 1 or Death Wish 3.
Death Wish. Oh.
Like that was New York. Like it was really that bad. And then they cleaned up until the mid 90s.
Well, I think I told you when I went my senior year, I joined wrestling school, and that fall, my friend Cougar from Alabama, who was a wrestler down here, came up to visit. Went to wrestling school, and then we drove down to New York, the Bronx, to go to a Yankees game and meet another person we knew. And I remember taking the train, and people were just pissing everywhere. And if it didn't if it wasn't piss, they were sleeping in piss. It was like piss, piss, piss everywhere.
The
And like,
subways are covered in like head to toe graffiti. Like it was bad.
Filthy. And people were like, whatever. And Times Square was like pouring everywhere. It was just
Yes,
awful.
I do miss that though.
I loved it.
25-cent peep shows. It was ridiculous. It was like
The Peep Show.
so for a lot of us, like the '80s wasn't this like super nostalgic, idyllic time period where like Star Wars and GI Joe and all this other shit. WWF.
Right.
It certainly is not like when you watch a show like The Goldbergs, you're like, what the fuck? Like, it's
like remember the Wonder Years?
Yeah, but the Wonder Years were a little bit more grounded than say the Goldbergs.
Right. They were more honest about some of the things that went on. I think with the Goldbergs, it's a comedy show, like even like more than like.
Yeah, I agree.
Wonder Years was more like left you like going, oh, that's kind of suck, I mean,
like when Winnie's brother died in Vietnam and shit. Like there was some shit going on in the Wonder Years. I watched the shit out of that show.
Hey, even oh my god, what was the show? Growing Pains. They killed off what's his face from Friends.
Yeah, the fucking the boyfriend.
It was so the thing about that was so well done is it was a gut punch. It was like he's dead. Like what? I was just there. It was so well done. It's too bad that what's his face Mike was a complete psychopath.
Oh yeah, he has his issues.
Oh my god.
But it's funny about like those shows, especially in the '80s. Like, Ha Ha is funny and funny and funny, and then there'd be an episode that would just kick you right in the nuts.
This week on a very special Growing Pains.
Like the time that Arnold and Dudley visited the bike shop, Different Strokes.
Next time on a very special.
Or the time that fucking loser kid from fucking Mr. Belvedere, his friend got AIDS. Like,
nothing will beat Fresh Prince from Bel Air getting shot.
Oh yeah,
what's
the ATM.
Yeah, and what's his name wanted to go and kill him?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god! Although the best was when his father showed up and he was like, "Get out of here!" Like,
why don't you love me, man?
Oh, so a good time.
We don't have that in like today's kind of sitcoms. We don't have like, not that I don't even know if we even have that today.
Well, I
don't even watch TV anymore. To be honest,
I'll tell you, I worry this is gonna be a country like shocking moment. Is that show Blackish?
Yeah.
Like it's got to be in the writer's book. They're like, let's do the episode. And they're all like, this is the show white people like, and they're all afraid. I guess SWAT's coming back and doing an episode with social justice, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, you have a lot of people saying, I don't want politics in my TV show. Did you watch TV in the 80s?
Yeah.
My favorite episode of Different Strokes is when Nancy Reagan came to Arnold's class and asked the kids if they smoke crack, and half of them raised their hands. That's my favorite episode of Different Strokes. Wow. So if a lot of people's like, I don't want politics in my... It's been there the entire time. So right. I don't know what to tell you. I understand that it's way more scarier now than it was, I guess. Maybe not for my parents. Maybe the 80s are scary as fuck for my parents. But for me, I'm like, oh, fucking Nancy Reagan's on fucking Different Strokes. And fucking that kid with the red hair smokes crack. Mm-hmm. That's so ridiculous. All right, next match. We have Demolition Axe match taking on the Powers of Pain with Mr. Fuji. Now, this is a feud that's been going on since Survivor Series when the Powers of Pain did the double turn, which we don't see very often of.
Right.
We almost never see a double turn at any point. And you had Mr. Fuji turn on Demolition, and the Powers of Pain turned heel, and they're off and running. And this was a handicap match for the WWF Tag Team titles. What are your thoughts on this match being defended 2 against 3?
Well, anytime this kind of stipulation happens, I think, well, the third person's getting pinned.
Well, obviously, I think we all knew that Mr. Fuji was taking the fall on this one.
And I think
good way to protect the Powers of Pain, though.
And Mr. Fuji should have been like, hell no, I ain't doing it.
But Fuji had credibility, though. He was like a 12-time tag team champion.
Can you imagine if Fuji kicked out? The Demolition hits the...
I'm surprised they didn't give the Powers of Pain the win here. Fuji's help.
Yeah.
That would have been interesting. Like, Fuji had legit credentials. Obviously, he was like a 30-time tag team champion in the WWF, in the 70s and early 80s in the WWF. So it's like, okay. I mean, Axe Smash just beat the shit out of him. I mean, it was an okay match. And you can't do a lot with the Warlord and Axe and Smash. Axe is obviously the better work in the Smash, but Smash is pretty good, and Barbarian is pretty good. I mean, they're gonna have that kind of they're not gonna be doing arm bars and shit all match long. You know what I mean? This is gonna be a brawl. And again, it's a feud match, so you expect it to come out. They had the ceremonial assault too in the match, so they got that out of the way. But yeah, Fuji takes the fall. Not the only manager to take a fall on this pay per view, which is interesting. 14 matches on this show, by the way.
Yep.
So they had to cut some of these matches down. Again, you don't need the 20-minute marathons that we get like on a modern WrestleMania where it's 7 hours long. They kept it pretty tight, but the matches were fun. So Axe and Smash retained the titles, and they would go on to be champions until they lose it to the Brainbusters right before SummerSlam. So they held it for a year plus, which is a substantial amount of time. It's like forever now.
Right.
But,
oh, they did.
Did New Day break that record? I want to say
they did. Yeah, New Day broke it.
Okay. But I think Demolition was probably more high-profile matches than New Day, I would say.
Well, I mean, I remember for the longest time, New Day was like, they were the host of WrestleMania, and it was like, why are they hosting it?
Yeah.
What's wrong with these people? It's a huge thing. No one gives a fuck who hosts it. No one.
When I went to SummerSlam that one year, that easily New Day was the most over act on that show. It was New Day and it was Jon Moxley were the two most over guys there. It was they missed on these guys a lot. They don't listen. I don't think they listen to the fans on Twitter more than they listen to the fans in the arena. And that's the problem. That being said, up next we had Dino Bravo with Frenchie Martin taking on rugged Ronnie Garvin. How much do you love Ronnie Garvin?
So much. I hope I never see him again.
I love Ronnie Garvin. I think Ronnie Garvin's great. Should he have been NWA World Heavyweight Champion? No.
Should have been Jimmy.
It should have been Jimmy. I would have taken a Jimmy Garvin world title run, even for the short amount of time than a Ronnie Garvin title run. That's for
same
sure.
amount of time. I will say this.
The only reason why Ronnie got that belt is because no one wanted to lose it right back. So they tried with Wyndham. They asked Wyndham to do it. He said no. They asked Ricky Morton to do it. He said no. It's like no one wanted to take that loss at Starrcade. Garvin said, do it. But then they kept Garvin off TV like the entire time. Like he was never, he wasn't presented as anything more than Ronnie Garvin, but he wasn't like Ronnie Garvin world champion on TV. I don't know why they did that. It was weird. But I like watching Ronnie Garvin beat the shit out of jobbers, though, because that's fucking fantastic. He kill fucking dudes. Like, oh my god.
I remember those days. The Garvin stomp. He's really kicking them. Whoops.
What are your thoughts on Dino Bravo overall?
Before or after he got killed?
Obviously before.
Dino Bravo was... I just never really got into him as a bad guy.
You never clicked, right?
Yeah, it just was like, oh, he's a big, strong guy, but it wasn't like I was like, oh man, this guy's gonna be like the next champion. He's a threat.
Like he was there for a while. He was there for a couple of years. Obviously ran Montreal. You know what I mean? Like he was the promoter there, and eventually, I guess I don't know if they sold or what. That stuff is all fucking sketchy anyway. But Dino comes in, and when he first comes in, he's like, he does shots as like the Canadian World Heavyweight Champion for a little bit, and then as a babyface, and then they do the heel turn, and then he's in the New Dream Team with Greg Valentine, and then eventually he does, what? Then he gets with Frenchie Martin, which is he's an interesting guy. Garvin like really fucking stomps the shit out of Frenchie Martin in this match. Like watch the ending of that match again. Like he fucking kills him.
Yeah, poor Frenchie.
Stomp. Frenchie Martin's been around forever too. USA is not okay. Up next we have the Brainbusters, Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard with Bobby the Brain Heenan taking on Strike Force. Now on the surface, this doesn't look like an angle match, but the angle happens in the match. So famously, this is when Rick Martel turns on Tito Santana, and they feud for fucking ever after this.
Yes.
But never have a match on pay-per-view. I think they were supposed to have a match at SummerSlam, but they said something like, I don't know if Martel had an injury or they said he was off in Paris doing modeling work. That was the excuse for him not being on the show.
Great.
But Martel was gone for a while. He's gone for a little bit over, I was not quite a year, but pretty close. And not sure why he was in Puerto Rico for a minute, and then he comes back, and he comes back as a baby face, and he wants to do singles, and they reform Strikeforce to have this match, and Tito misses the flying forearm, and Martel gets mad, and he walks out, and the Braindusters do a hell of a spike power driver on Tito. Like, it's crazy good. So, Matt, what are your thoughts on Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard's run in the WWF? They did win the belts now.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was a Horseman fan, so I was disappointed they left, but then I was like, okay,
They didn't do anything crazy with them either. It's not like they gave them all fucking crazy fucking gimmicks and shit.
No, they were just kind of same dudes, just not as greedy. It was like, we're just gonna kill you. Okay.
The Brainbuster, like the name Brainbuster is kind of weird, but they didn't change. They got them jackets that said Brainbusters on it, and they're basically the same guys for the most part.
Sure did.
Just right before they left, they were the NWA World Tag Team Champions. So.
Yeah, I remember I was a Horseman fan, so it was like, oh no, come on.
And, watching Arn Anderson wrestle in the WWF is weird, though.
Yeah.
Did it feel weird? It feels like
it always did.
Freaking weird. But yeah, they have a hell of a spike pile driver, and we see both Arn Anderson on Tully Blanchard on TV today, so that's good.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The Brainbusters were going to beat Demolition a couple of months from right before SummerSlam. And they got a little bit of a tag team title run. That's good. And then they leave by the end of '89. So they're not here very long.
Is that when Tully woke up?
Well, that's when Tully they try to go back to the NWA, and someone leaked the fact that Tully Blanchard failed his drug test, and then the NWA rescinded his contract.
Yeah.
So Tully couldn't go back to WWF. He was out of a job and basically out of the business for the most part after this. So.
Where did he show up? Was he on the AWA at one point?
He was for a little bit. He made a couple shots for ECW as well. So, but at that point, he's as a full-time performer, he's pretty much done after this run.
Yeah.
When did he start? 75? He was around for a while. 75, yeah. Debuted in 75, so he's 15 years in. So we have Tully Blanchard on our show. Feuding with the Guerreros. Right. He's in the AWA 1990 project, feuding with the Guerreros. Hopefully, Tully can stay sober for us. That'd be nice. Up next, another kind of big angle here, big rivalry is Jake the Snake Roberts and Andre the Giant. Jake Snake Roberts actually brought he brought the Snake to ringside and gave Andre the Giant a heart attack.
Yes, Bobby Snake, Bobby.
What are your thoughts on Andre being afraid of snakes? Did that hurt his character in any way? Like, you think he would just eat them?
I think it was fine. He had to give something for Andre to be like.
He did give him a weakness, which was nice.
Yeah, he had to have something to work with. Otherwise, he's just going to annihilate everybody he faces.
They've been running this angle since probably December, I want to say. Maybe a little bit beforehand. They were definitely feuding at the Royal Rumble. So, this is for, about 3 or 4 months into this angle. Then you have the return of Big John Studd, which I think they were kind of prepping an Andre Giant, Big John Studd feud in the future. But they figured out that John Studd couldn't go at all.
Yeah.
And those matches with a very limited Andre and a very limited John Studd would have been terrible.
Oh, my God.
So, John Studd was the guest referee here and ended up in a disqualification when Andre attacked John Studd. So, what are your thoughts on John Studd coming back to the WWF in '89? That was rough, wasn't it? He wins the Rumble.
As a fellow Killer Kowalski graduate, I should really be nice. But I will just say that, yeah, he was disappointing.
What was John Studd doing in between his runs, though? Like, because when did he leave WWF? 86? He left in '86. He's gone for 3 years? Maybe 2.5 years? Like, what's he doing?
It's probably independent scene.
According to this, he said he retired for 2 years.
On a car dealership? I don't know.
It's weird.
Well, those guys always do that. Like they owning a car dealership, and it's like, what?
Well, a lot of guys ended up doing that. Do you know he was on the TV show Hunter? Remember that show, Hunter?
Yes.
That show was dope as hell.
If you like
I used to watch the shit out of
balding
Hunter
dudes
as a
who
kid.
just don't have respect for the law.
He was also on the episode of the A-Team, and he was on the episode of a TV show called Beauty and the Beast
Well, that
that
makes
ran for 3 years on CBS.
my mom liked that show.
Oh. He was in a couple of movies. He was in Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man. I know that's your favorite film of all time.
Oh, it's up there.
Yeah. John said probably should have stayed retired in 1989.
Yeah.
For sure. But, they always tried to bring back that Andre Stud feud. They tried it a couple times, and I think once was enough on that one, to be completely honest. Like, let's bring back Killer Khan, too, while we're at it. For fuck's sake.
On. That's money right there. Close the gate.
Up next, we have the Hart Foundation. Obviously, Bret Hart and Neville Neidhart taking on Greg Valentine and Honky Tonk Man. Now, what they did to set up this match, they broke them up and did single matches with these guys. So you had a couple of fun singles matches with these guys. Obviously, Jimmy Hart's involved in the Hart Foundation. They're still beefing over their contract. This is pre-Rhythm and Blues. Greg Valentine's and Honky Tonk Man too, which Honky didn't have a whole lot to do after losing the Intercontinental Championship, but Greg is on the decline at this point too. Obviously, the Harts are on their way up. They would actually regain the World Tag Team titles in 1990. So, what are your thoughts on Greg Valentine and the Honky Tonk Man at this point? Like, what do you do when it looks like they get to the end of their rope here? Like, what do you do with wrestlers who look like they're getting to the end of the deal?
Use them to put over the young guys. Pass the torch, baby. I mean, what else are they gonna do? And
like, what do you? When Greg Valentine dyed his hair and the Rhythm and Blues, like, what was your reaction to that?
I was mad they dyed his hair black. What? What?
That was a rough time. And Greg has such luxurious hair too. He's like the best hair. He still has that hair too, by the way.
Oh, he was at the Cody versus Brody Lee dog collar match in the stands.
So you got Greg
Special
who has
guest.
fantastic hair, and you dyed that shit blonde. I would have been pissed. Nice to see the Hart Foundation's getting the win here. Obviously, they will go on to have a match with the Brainbusters at SummerSlam. So, not for the titles though, because it's a non-title match. But again, a little interesting way they did this. They broke them up and they had single matches on TV on Superstars, and a little bit of interference here and there. But that's a nice little way to set this angle up, set up this match. So I thought it was fun overall. Up next, you had Ravishing Rick Rude with Bobby Heenan taking on the Ultimate Warrior. Now this is for the Intercontinental Championship. Obviously, Rude and Warrior had been feuding up just right before the Royal Rumble. Obviously, they had the super pose down when Warrior technically wins the super pose down, but Rick Rude hits him with that workout bar and beats the living shit out of him with it, and then Warrior goes nuts and throws around guys like Nick Bockwinkel and other WWF officials around. So that was fun. What are your thoughts on Rude winning the belt here and taking the belt off of Warrior for a little bit?
That was fantastic.
You like to finish?
Loved it. I was so sick of Warrior, and it was just great.
So you were an anti-Warrior guy pretty early.
Oh yeah.
What was it about the Warrior that you did not like at all?
Just his moveset, his promos were always just like, well, what are you trying to say here? There's all over the place.
He definitely had the random promos. Now, I was into the Warrior up until he beat Hogan, because I was a big time. I'm not afraid to say it, guys. I was a big time Hulkamaniac as a kid, and when Warrior beat him, I didn't like the Ultimate Warrior anymore. That's the reality of the situation. So Rick Rude gets the win here with help from Bobby the Brain Heenan. Heenan sweeps the leg out from Warrior to get the 1-2-3 with Heenan holding the leg. Warrior does get revenge on Bobby Heenan, which leads to, I believe, a couple of Weasel Suit matches in between here and SummerSlam. Rick Rude does win the Intercontinental Championship, which was nice for him. I think overall it was a fun match. Like, it was a really, like, Rude had good matches with the Warrior. And I think he's like one of the few people. Him and Savage are like his two best matches. Hogan too.
Mm-hmm.
Not the Halloween Havoc match, but the WrestleMania match. But Rude hits this fucking pile driver that, like, I don't know, like it should have killed him. So like, it's almost like a Gonzo bomb where he does the pile driver, but he like a normal regular Texas style pile driver, but he goes to his knees, but like he lets go, so Warrior just hits. Like, oh man, it's ridiculous. And then a little interesting thing in the beginning of the match too, like Warrior, Rude goes to attack Warrior, and he goes to knee him in the gut, but Warrior's still wearing the belt, and he hurts his knee. Like that. I thought it was a fun little unique detail that you don't see very often. So that was fun. Up next in a nothing match, we had Bad News Brown taking on Jim Duggan that ended up in this double disqualification. Um, this could have been a really good brawl, but it wasn't. This match was not good at all.
Yeah.
Um, they really didn't have an issue going into this as well. I love Jim Duggan, but he's definitely, in terms of in the ring, he's starting to decline here a little bit. I do appreciate his work in Mid South for sure, and even his early WWF stuff. Even some of the matches he had with Andre that were really, really good. But this Bad News Brown match was not good at all.
Yeah.
But Matt, what are your thoughts on Bad News Brown? I
I
thought
love it.
Bad News would have made, if you want to keep Randy Savage babyface, it would have been a nice bridge in between Savage and Hogan.
Yeah.
Uh, so, what are your thoughts on Bad News?
I I was a fan of Bad News, and mostly because my friend in high school at the time was a black belt, so to talk about that kick he would do would really mess somebody up. So, it's like I liked Bad News Brown. I liked his attitude. He was not like anybody else, which is
He's good on a promo.
yeah.
His work was okay. He was good enough. The Ghetto Blaster was a cool finishing maneuver. And like I
Hmm.
said, I think he would have, if you want to keep Savage babyface, but you want to put the belt back on Hogan, have Bad News beat Savage because they have an issue. You know what I mean? I think this is why there's no issue in this match because Bad News right before this is feuding with both kind of Savage and Hogan. Bad News goes on Brother Love and accuses Jack Tunney of favoring Randy Savage by getting sexual favors from Miss Elizabeth, which is really risque for WWF TV in 1989.
Yes, it was.
It's ridiculous. Like, holy shit. It's one of those, it's kind of like, when you're watching the show, like, oh, okay, it's normal WWF, normal WWF. Like, okay, okay. And then we have Bad News Brown go, well, she's doing favors for you? Like, and
Right.
as a little kid, I'm like, what do you mean by favors? Like, she's ironing his shirt? I don't understand what that means. As an adult, I'm like, oh, she's fucking blowing him in the back of the fucking building.
Right.
They keep Bad News Brown away from him. Like, holy shit. They don't really blow off the Savage Bad News Brown feud. What they do instead, because Savage turns heel, Hogan takes Savage's spot and just beats Bad News with Ms.
Yeah.
Elizabeth on this tournament. That's how that went. Um, but I'm assuming that's why there's no issue between Bad News and Jim Duggan here, because again they're coming off straight off that the Bad News Savage and Hogan stuff. So up next, and this had a very memorable angle on TV on a rare angle on primetime wrestling. You had the Red Rooster defeated Bobby the Brain Heenan with the Brooklyn Brawler. And the lead up to this, obviously the lead up to this match is that Bobby Heenan takes Terry Taylor and makes him the Red Rooster, um, which killed this guy's career. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of people would say, I don't buy this. Terry would actually say this, and I don't think Terry's telling the truth. He says, and Bruce Pritchard says, and a couple other people say that if Terry embraced the Red Rooster gimmick, it would have gotten over. But when you see the angle play out, it doesn't kind of work that way because they bury Terry Taylor like right away. So you have Bobby Heenan who recruits Terry Taylor. He basically says, "I can take this nobody, this guy who has no talent, this guy who has no size, and I can make him a champion." Then he
Yep.
makes him into the Red Rooster, and that killed him. At any point during this angle with Bobby, when is Terry Taylor supposed to be cocky? Because he's not.
Right.
He's a babyface like the entire time. He's on the heel side, like at Survivor Series. He's on the heel side, but on no point is he a heel. Like we actually feel bad for him because Bobby's giving him all this shit.
Right.
So eventually he turns on Bobby, becomes a babyface. He gets attacked by Brooklyn Brawler on Primetime Wrestling. Brooklyn Brawler actually bumps Monsoon. Monsoon gets hit with a chair on that show. So it leads up to this match, and then the Red Rooster beats Bobby Heenan in 31 seconds. And they injured Bobby Heenan, by the way. They actually protected Bobby, too, because he got beat up by the Ultimate Warrior before this. So, what are you going to do there? After this, the Red Rooster stuff gets really pronounced, where he does the fucking crowing and the Rooster Boosters and all the other shit.
Yeah.
It gets really bad. And you would say for the AWA 1990 project, right? Would I bring in a Terry Taylor in 1990? Absolutely not. Send him to WCW for a year, and I'll take Terry Taylor in 1991. There's no way I can take him off this Red Rooster gimmick. I can't. There's guys we can't take. That's one of them. All right, in our main event, we have Hulk Hogan, who defeated Randy Savage for the WWF World Heavyweight Championship. Now, this angle has been built up for over a year.
Yep.
It's probably the best built angle of all time. You guys know all the particulars. Miss Elizabeth takes a hell of a bump on this head in his main event. And then they have the confrontation in the locker room, and then Savage is all pissed off, saying that Hogan has lust in his eyes for Elizabeth. But this is something that had been brewing for quite a while. We saw a little tease of it at the Royal Rumble when Savage slaps Hogan in the face. It's a perfectly constructed angle. And obviously by the buy rate and the fact that they continued this angle for the next year almost off and on.
Yeah.
Shows that this angle had legs, and not for nothing, to be completely honest. I understand they had this at Trump Plaza. I understand that they were paid a lot of money for this. This match could have sold out a stadium. I'm 100% convinced that this match would have sold out any stadium. It could have done 93,000. I'm saying it right now. It sounds ridiculous because it is. But this angle was so hot, and Savage is so over, and Hogan's so over. This is like the peak of Hulkamania here. He's coming off a no holds barred. And it's just perfectly constructed angle. So Matt, what are your thoughts on this match, the overall angle, and everything that went into it?
Oh, it's one of my all-time favorite feuds, angles in wrestling history. And again, it goes to show that, long-term booking pays off big. Unfortunately, what happens is they get so caught up in the week-to-week numbers, well, get people invested and they'll be engaged. And, really, it's probably one of the best, if not the best, angle ever done in wrestling. It just so well laid out. I still say Randy turning on Hogan is one of those best moments where you're like, if you're a Mega Powers fan, you love that team. It's like, heartbreaking, but you can totally get how he's a, jealous monster. You get that, and I think that made the feud so much better. And I just wish that, I think with a rivalry, any good rivalry, like, you have to have both sides be good. And I think just having Savage, job out to Hogan, essentially is a hurt. Like, not saying
it's funny because like Hogan beat Savage into the ground. He beat him every time out, but it didn't hurt Savage though.
Well, Savage was such a great personality. I'm just saying, you think of great rivalries, like Jordan or Bird and Magic, right? It's because they could both push each other, and like, it just with wrestling, there's always been, a lot, so much recently, but for a long time, the good guy always had to win. It had to be,
Did Savage ever get a pinfall win on Hogan? I don't think so. Not in the WWF.
I don't think he ever did.
WCW maybe, but definitely not in the WWF. He never got a pinfall. I mean, he may have got a disqualification or countout win, but he definitely he never got a pinfall on him. That's for sure. Not even one with the tights or something. Nothing.
I just think I remember watching the video of Flair beating Hogan in New York in that house show. Yeah. It was a Garden, maybe, and the fans going berserk. And like, think if that was Savage. Like if Savage.
Is that the one that reversed the decision?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I would have gave Savage a win somewhere at some point during this rivalry.
Because that would have extended it. Like if you had Savage beat like the SummerSlam match, have Savage come back and beat Hogan in the SummerSlam match.
Even you can throw Bill, you can throw Zeus in there. You could throw fucking Sherry in there. It could have been a tag, something. He needs to give Savage something.
I'm saying, like in that tag match, have him pin Hogan, and he could talk about that, and you build up to the Survivor Series, and he beats Hogan again, and
You
now
beat
it's
him at
like
Survivor Series. It doesn't matter because it's not for the belt. And then you build up for the next WrestleMania.
right, and you have next WrestleMania, you have the rematch, and Savage has beaten Hogan in the tag match, in Survivor Series, in the Rumble. He keeps beating him, and then you're like, holy shit, he's gonna beat Hogan, and then Hogan wins, and you're like, okay, that's cool, but at least it would have been like, he's gonna beat him, you know. And I think that's just the type of booking that again was in not no way would have been entertained back then, unfortunately.
No, because they had this they actually they had the rivalry before in '85 too.
Yeah,
So they brought it back, and it did tremendous business. Savage did business on his own as a babyface. It might have been too early to turn him, but what are you going to do at this point?
right.
You could have had this really dynamic 1-2 punch with Hogan and Savage, but you want to get this match out, and you didn't put this match in front of a stadium audience. But although you probably made more money, doing it at Trump Plaza, but
Yeah.
it could have been. It was the best feud probably in the history of WWF. I would say. I think it's better than Rock and Austin. I think it's better than Austin McMahon. I might be in the minority about that, but I think this is the best feud of all time.
I think for well, I mean I can see the argument, but that's the thing. It's a good example of how powerful like the first of the long line of heel boss, evil bosses, feud versus the upstart, renegade with Austin McMahon. Yeah, that was like people could relate to that in a lot of ways. Like it was different. Like
It
the
was different
Hogan
because
Sav-
they didn't have a ton of matches though.
right.
Even Rock Austin they didn't have the amount of matches like especially. I bet you if I count the Hogan Savage matches like in house shows and on a different would it be Saturday's Night Main Event with Buster Douglas as the referee or even other pay-per-view stuff, SummerSlam, the tag team match.
Right.
I'm going to say that all Austin and Rock didn't have as many matches. Now maybe Brett and Shawn, even that didn't have as many matches. So I think this might be in terms of WWF rivalries, it might be number one. I have it number one. That's for sure. But a fantastic match. I think a really good card overall. I really do love this show. It was definitely you should go out of your way to watch it. That's for sure. And this was the number one show for its era. And when we're covering the AWA in 1990, we're talking about 89, 90, 91. And it might be the best show of that 3-year period. I would say it's probably the best show. We'll go through it. I'm not counting New Japan and Old Japan shows, by the way. But we'll go through a lot of these other shows too. We're going to talk about some WCW shows. We'll talk about more AWA shows as we progress. So, but I think overall, I really do enjoy this show. I think it's worth a watch, 1,000%. All right, guys. So we are officially out of time. So for Matt Riley, I'm Alex G. Have a good night.